For as long as we can remember, we've told ourselves a very particular story about aging and memory. You know the one, a slow, inevitable fade into the sunset. But what if that story, the one we've all accepted, is just plain wrong? Today, we're going to dive into a groundbreaking new model that flips everything we thought we knew completely on its head.
Right. The classic idea, the one we're all familiar with, is that memory loss is this gentle slope. It's a slow erosion of our abilities that kicks in somewhere in midlife and just keeps on going. A steady, predictable, linear decline.
But the latest science, and we're talking large-scale studies and really advanced neuroimaging, is telling a profoundly different story. It suggests that for a whole lot of people, memory loss isn't a long, slow slide at all. No, it's something way more sudden and honestly, a lot more dramatic.
So I want you to forget the idea of a gentle slope. The new science is telling us we need to be thinking about a steep cliff, a sudden, really rapid acceleration in memory decline that can happen after years and years of things being relatively stable.
Here it is, the contrast in a nutshell. The old myth was that straight line down. But the new science, it reveals something called a threshold effect. It seems our memory holds up really well. It compensates, it stays remarkably stable, until it hits a critical point. And then it just drops off sharply.
And just how sharp is that drop? Well, once someone crosses this threshold, and this typically happens between the ages of 70 and 78, the rate of their memory decline can accelerate by 2 to 4 times. That is not a gentle fade. That is a full-on system failure. So what on earth is happening behind the scenes to cause this? The science points to 4 key biological factors that all work together. A good way to think about them is as the 4 pillars holding up your cognitive health. For decades, they stand strong. But when they start to weaken, the entire structure is at risk of a sudden, catastrophic collapse. So let's break down each of these 4 pillars. First, we've got the breakdown of the brain's own repair mechanisms. Second, the disconnection of its vital communication network. Third, the total exhaustion of its backup resources. And finally, a critical tipping point in inflammation. Okay. Pillar number 1 is all about maintenance. Your brain has this incredible ability called synaptic homeostasis. It's basically constantly repairing itself, strengthening connections to compensate for any minor damage or cell loss. It's the brain's own built-in self-stabilizing system. Pretty amazing?
But here's the problem. At a certain point, that system just gets overwhelmed. The damage starts piling up faster than the brain can repair it. And these critical connections for memory, the ones that form the very basis of who we are, they start to be lost for good. And that's when performance starts to decline, and fast. Next up, we have Pillar 2, network disconnection. You see, your memory doesn't just live in one single spot. It relies on this huge, interconnected network of brain regions all talking to each other. It's kind of like the brain's internet, and the core memory circuit is its most important server farm. So when that network starts to fail, these key communication hubs, think of them like major internet exchanges. They just start to go offline. Information can't get routed effectively. The whole system becomes fragmented and really inefficient, and that leads to that abrupt drop in cognitive function. Pillar 3 is all about a concept you might have heard of before: cognitive reserve. This is the brain's resilience, its backup generator, if you will. You actually build it up over your entire lifetime through education, doing complex work, and staying socially engaged. It allows your brain to find clever workarounds and maintain function even when there's some underlying damage. Now, here's the really key thing you have to understand about cognitive reserve. It doesn't prevent the damage. It just masks the symptoms. It's an incredible buffer, for sure, but every buffer has its limit. Once the underlying damage hits a certain critical level, the reserve is exhausted, the mask comes off, and the decline looks incredibly steep because all those workarounds fail at once. And that brings us to Pillar 4, the neuroinflammatory tipping point. Your brain has its own dedicated immune cells, and for most of your life, they're protective. They clean up debris, they fight off invaders. But with chronic, low-grade inflammation, they become primed, like soldiers on high alert, just waiting for a fight. And then, a trigger comes along, like the protein plaques we associate with Alzheimer's, and it causes them to just completely overreact. They shift from being protectors to being destroyers, launching this self-reinforcing cascade of damage. At this point, inflammation isn't just a side effect, it becomes an active driver, accelerating the collapse of the entire system. So, you're probably wondering, how do these 4 pillars all fit together?
Well, they combine to create what scientists are now calling a unified threshold model. And to really understand what that means, let's use a simple analogy.
I want you to imagine a game of Jenga. For decades, your brain is like that stable tower. You can pull out a few blocks here and there, and these represent small amounts of age-related damage, and the tower stays standing. That's because those pillars of self-repair, network resilience, and cognitive reserve are holding it steady. But as those pillars start to weaken, the whole system becomes fragile, wobbly, and then one final block gets pulled. Maybe it's a little too much inflammation, or the failure of a critical network hub, and boom, you cross the threshold. It's not a slow lean. It's a sudden, catastrophic collapse. The entire tower comes crashing down. Scientists have a name for this, a phase transition.
Okay, I know this is a fascinating and maybe a little bit sobering new model, so why does it matter? What's the takeaway? Well, it isn't one of despair. In fact, understanding this cliff might actually give us a whole new sense of hope and a completely new strategy for the future.
And this right here is it. This is the single most important insight from all of this new science. If the decline is actually a sudden collapse, that means there's a critical window of time before the collapse when intervention could be most effective. The goal isn't just to slow the slide anymore, it's to prevent the fall altogether.
This model really represents a true paradigm shift. It helps explain the huge variation we see in how different people age. It redefines diseases like Alzheimer's not just as a simple pileup of bad proteins, but as a complex system-level failure. And maybe most importantly, it gives researchers brand new targets, therapies designed specifically to strengthen the pillars and keep that Jenga tower from ever reaching its tipping point in the first place.
So, we'll leave you with this question to chew on. If we stop thinking about memory loss as some slow, inevitable fade and start seeing it as a preventable system collapse, how does that change the way we think about our own health, about public policy, and about the race for a cure? The answer is, it changes everything.